Welcome to Next in Tech, an S&P Global Market Intelligence podcast where the world of emerging tech lives. I'm your host, Eric Anselman, Chief Analyst for Industry and Company Data at S&P Global Market Intelligence. And today, we're going to be talking about the creator economy. And with me to discuss it is analyst Zach Champa. Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's long overdue.
It's great to have you on. It has been far too long with all the things that we've been going through, both on the research side and beyond. But I thought this would be a really useful segue from the discussions around advertising that we were doing in the previous episode. And because one of the things we're coming to is that ad dollars are shifting. There's renewed interest in being able to really get to what is the fundamental part of influencing through advertising. And guess what? The other side of this, the creator economy in all of its scope, has a big role to play in that. And again, the area you cover.
It does. And it's worth mentioning of the creator economy, a lot of folks probably assume that it's a big buzzword that has occurred in the last 5 or so years, especially with the rise of platforms like TikTok that prioritize short form video. But influencing and creators have been existing long before even the internet, back to the earliest days of the Roman Empire, where you had celebrities wearing certain brands. So the history is there. We just happen to be in the best moment of it now.
We want to know what brand of violin was being played as burned, but
who sponsored Mozart?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about really what that entire landscape looks like. And how do you carve that up? And I guess what role do each of the pieces play?
Yeah, it's a great question to ask. And the thing that I like to start off with is what I like to call the media mix, which is a term that a lot of folks have probably been familiar with in some general sort of exposure. And that is a blend of paid, earned, and owned media. Each one has a different sort of function, but you can find each across the scope of sort of social media content as a whole for brands, right? So paid media is going to be content generally that a company is paying to promote, in the senses of, you're scrolling on social media and you see a sponsored ad come up from whatever food brand of the week. Earned media is going to be media that a consumer typically will put forth voluntarily without any sort of incentive, right? So that'll be an unincentivized review on social media, or a video of somebody reviewing the newest fast food item. I think a lot in terms of food, as you'll be able to tell. But those types of things that are popular, things that people are going out on their own volition to make content about, that's going to be your earned media. And then owned media is stuff that's on a brand's own channels. So that'll be anything on, a website or a social media page coming directly from that brand. And there can be cross between each of them. So yeah, you can pay to promote the UGC. We're just talking about user-generated content. We'll get into that. But paying to promote the earned media, paying to promote the owned content too. But a healthy brand is going to need a good mix of all three, because if you don't, it seems a little lackluster in certain areas. For example, if you don't have a lot of earned media, it seems like there's not a lot of buzz around your brand. If you don't have a lot of owned media, people go to your channels and they're like, what's going on here? Like, why am I not seeing anything from whatever company that I like? And if you don't have a lot of paid media, they'll see what your competitors are doing and they'll say, well, clearly they have more of a budget. There's more of a reason to buy into this because they have a much bigger presence. So the sweet spot is different for every single brand, but it's typically a good mix. And so it all starts with that media mix.
Well, that was one of the things that Ian Whitaker was pointing out in the previous episode, which is that organizations are getting back into that understanding that brand promotion and brand establishment is really critical. And it's not just looking at, targeted capabilities. It's not looking at, just getting the clicks, views, what have you. It's actually being able to establish and define a brand. And as you're pointing out, it's got to have all those pieces.
It does, 100%.
If the violin manufacturer is saying, wow, our violins work really well in high temperatures, that's okay. If they've got, a short video of Nero going, I love the way this violin sounds, especially when it gets warm. Yeah, that's all the better.
Yeah, it's a great blend of having everything. And if you think about it today too, because we're so interconnected, you have so many different choices for a lot of the items that you want to buy that how do you determine what's going to be the best pick for you? How do you make the initial decision if it's a new product you've never purchased before between 3 or 4, 5, 10, 20 different companies? And it all goes down to the content that you're going to find online.
Well, I mean, this is one of those things that we see in information security. This interesting parallel that kicks around this, which is that why is it that we wind up with what are complicated buying decisions, which in something like security you'd figure would be technically driven, and yet in a lot of cases where a deep understanding of what the technical differentiation is between products, what do people do? They do the human thing, and they buy brand names. They buy what their friends
Yeah.
buy.
I've done that to a lot of companies too when we talk to them, is overall, once you get to a certain level when it comes to the marketing departments of the companies, sometimes the companies forget that the people in the room are consumers. And if you just keep on thinking like a consumer, it becomes a lot easier to do the marketing. Everybody tries to come up with these big convoluted marketing campaigns, but at the end of the day, we buy things very, very regularly, you know, on the hour, every hour for the most part. And if you maintain that narrative of I am a buyer, would I like this, rather than I have this great idea that could be crazy, there's a lot of truth in remembering where you come from, is what I like to say.
It's a fundamental thing that we're doing day in, day out. That's your point now.
We are.
Yeah. Well, so where does all of this fit from the economic perspective, and how all these pieces wind up coming together as part of whether or not it's ad spend, overall directional intent from an organization? How does it all work?
There is a really big trend right now in terms of media spend when it comes to brands. We just published our 2025 merchant study, and in that we like to evaluate what largely consumer-facing businesses are spending on, what tech they're investing in over the course of the year, and then we evaluate it longitudinally across previous years. I believe we're in our 6th year, 7th year. Don't quote me on the specific number, but we've done a lot of iterations of it at this point. It even predates me, and I've been here 4 years.
It's like
So
strong longitudinal history. Yeah.
very strong longitudinal history. The data is really, really cool to compare over the course of time. And once we get to the decade too, being able to track that is going to be fascinating. But one of the things that we look at a lot is budgets. We have 2 surveys, one that looks at org dynamics and budgets at a higher level, and this merchant study is, again, more focused on actual merchants, right? So the interesting thing this year is that advertising spend on social media channels is seeing the biggest increase in terms of budget, right? So that's going to beat out things like SEO, email, web. A lot of the money is going to social. It's not to say that it's not going to other places, but year over year, even when we see economic uncertainty, we are largely still seeing such a big investment in social because for the most part, that's where a lot of folks are spending their time, right? If you think about it, back, 15 years ago, you turn on the TV and you just watch TV. But now people have their laptops open, they have their phones in their hands, they have, whatever they're streaming for the night as well. And for the most part, free time is spent on social media. And there are so many different things that exist because of the platforms that it's just a fantastic opportunity for brands to get that recognition. And other channels obviously still have a lot of value, right? Email is typically everybody's preferred communication source still. But at the end of the day, you're going to spend more time on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, than you are going to spend just staring at your inbox. So,
Well, and one of the things, it's actually, I think it was Seth Schaefer who was pointing this out a few episodes ago around the Kagan Media Summit, was saying that there's now such a proliferation of digital advertising capacity that organizations are now having a difficult time actually trying to figure out which channels do they use, how do they leverage it. And again, if linear TV, which has been sort of the bulwark forever in all of this, if a lot of those eyeballs are shifting other places, you want to put those dollars where those eyeballs have headed.
you absolutely do. And there's a lot of interesting stuff to come out of the shift from linear TV too, right, to CTV. And social spending is still higher than CTV. But even when it comes to data leveraging, or the fact that almost everybody I don't remember what the specific statistic is off the top of my head, because this I wasn't prepared to bring up, but the majority of American households, and I believe this is from one of our Kagan surveys as well, is I want to say ballpark, it's 60 to 80% of American households have a smart TV now, right? The numbers were wildly different 5 years ago. Then you look at the costs of cable, you look at the costs of all the different streaming platforms, the fact that people went from bundling to individuals and now it's back to bundling. But, how do you as a brand decide, do I want to invest in linear or do I just jump to CTV? Do I go all in? Is it a mix of both? Should I look at DOOH as well? That's digital out of home if people aren't unfamiliar. And you have the bulwark is a great word to use too. That's a good one. Bulwark of social media. That massive, massive just powerhouse of influence and virality. That's really, really sexy to the brands too, right? Because virality has an unlimited upside. It's like short selling on a market. You can make a ton of money. You can lose it all too, but it's that allure of getting, 10, 20, 30 million views overnight because of one launch.
If only we could go viral.
If only we could go viral. It's very captivating, and a lot of folks want to see that happen, and it's been the case since even 2010 and before that. Early days of YouTube, it's always been this grail that companies have chased, because if you can have that moment, you win it all, and the value of it is in a lot of ways a lot higher than just general advertising, because of that waterfall of one person did it and now somebody else is going to do it, somebody else is going to do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Well, you can hope for that upside. You put your advertising dollars in, you pull the lever, and hopefully it comes up all cherries, right?
Yeah, I know, it's like Vegas.
On the creator side of things, what does that look like in terms of where those ad dollars are going, and what does that do in terms of the dynamic for how that market works?
100%. So the creator economy as a whole, like I was saying, influencers as the preferred term as content creators, but we're going to use the term influencers because it's got the bite to it, right? We'll use them interchangeably. But these influencers have existed, like I said, very, very early days in time. It's simply a different medium that they're able to influence people. Our society and the rise of social media has done a really, really good job at propelling the voices of basically anybody from any walk of life. For the most part, people are going to find different categories, different niches to exist in. Makeup is a good one to look at because you have a lot of different makeup content creators and people who have gone from making videos in their basements to becoming essentially A-list celebrities, right? And obviously there's that beautiful allure of the dream, but at the end of the day, there is a really, really fascinating phenomenon that occurs when it comes to the level of relationships folks have with their audiences that hasn't really existed before. It's a lot more intimate. It's a lot more personal. You're seeing things in people's everyday lives, and you trust these creators, right, to guide you in the right direction. It becomes so much more parasocial in a lot of ways, where you've got, millions of followers, and it's up to these people to guide folks. And, that's where the brand deals come in. What a lot of folks don't understand is influencer marketing is a lot more complicated than just giving an influencer a product and some money to talk about it. There's also a funnel that exists with that, where if you go from the top right, actually, it's easy to start from the bottom. If you have what are called micro influencers, those are folks with about 1,000 to 5,000 followers. You giving them a product is going to help a lot with your conversion. Whereas the higher up the funnel you go, to somebody with 1 million followers, 2 million, 3 million, whatever, that helps with awareness, right? And so it's really, really cool to watch the strategy come in. But when you're spending this money, you want to get the most of your value. And sometimes the question is influencer marketing a good use of money? And it depends on what your goals are.
Well, because we got into that discussion on the previous episode, really talking about how do you understand how you pursue this? Ian and Natalie were both talking about what was happening in both the transition in AI, digital media, and what's happening with agencies and how that all gets managed. And we're making the point that there still is a strong role for agencies to play because this stuff's hard to figure out. And as you're pointing out, figuring out what's reasonable spend for what you're trying to achieve is not simple. And we've gone through these various cycles of we're going to automate digital ad spend. We're going to be able to get enough feedback so we'll know exactly where we should be spending. But guess what? We're dealing with humans, and that sort of stuff complicates life. And even in the wonderful world of AI, there's some difficulties in actually sorting this stuff out.
There are. And you said something great there too. You always say stuff great. You're Eric Hanselman. The larger story here is the human connection, and there are obviously a lot of great use cases for AI and simplifying the process, but social media in particular is a very people-driven medium, right? People like the authenticity in particular that it creates. That's one of the reasons why user-generated content is really, really important, and we'll get into that in a little bit too. But yeah, there's room for everybody, and there is a lot of capacity for AI to assist with that, but it's really such a people first area, and that needs to be the priority, right? You'll see a lot on social media. There's pushback from AI generated content, especially for advertising, right? A lot of folks don't like it. But then you get to using regular people and relying on regular people, and that holds so much more weight. And where the agency piece comes into it, they're very, very skilled at being able to guide those brands that may feel a little bit wayward or even just want to simplify the process but still rely on people's knowledge and capacity. And what that ultimately is manifested in recently is a much bigger rise in influencer marketing platforms. There's our big technology, is you've obviously got a lot of social media management platforms like your Sprouts, your Sprinklers, your Hootsuites, but you've also got, I mean, you've got Aspire IQ, you've got Grin, you've got Creator IQ, you have these one-stop shops that allow people to ingest in all these different creators from all these different niches, right? And identify what people's conversion rates are, what their audience demographics look like, what their engagement rates are, who's got the best sort of match for brand sort of style. And it gives the agencies a tool, or some of the agencies own them, which we'll talk about in a second. Some of the agencies are able to come in and plug into those platforms and make these campaigns a lot easier. And so there is tech that's come out of it too. A lot of them integrate with AI as well, but it's to really streamline that process. And while the agencies are helping the brands, the influencer marketing platforms are helping the agencies in a lot of senses to help streamline that process. There was a really interesting acquisition. Publicis, one of the biggest advertising agencies in the world, just bought I believe their fourth influencer marketing platform, and they purchased Captivate, which is one of the leaders by revenue and by creator volume, and that's been brought completely into their fold. And so they're very, very interesting right now too from an analysis standpoint, because it's like, okay, they're clearly focusing on this tech too. It's products of a fascinating time in media.
Well, I guess maybe a little science sprinkled into the art of this process.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Still a lot of art as it goes.
There's so much art. That's the important thing, is people's ability to come up with unique concepts is really what drives the creator economy, more so than, what an agency can brainstorm in a room of people. There are still totally qualified campaigns that come out of it, but it's creators and the way they spin their styles that goes a lot further than something coming from the brand. Being able to have a voice of a creator does a lot more in terms of the influence.
Now, looking at the other side of that whole picture, the user-generated content piece, that winds up being clearly a strong component of it. How does that fit in?
UGC is a fascinating thing. Word of mouth has always been one of the most prominent forms of marketing, right? And if you think about UGC, a lot of it can be that. And for folks who are curious about what the difference is between influencer marketing and UGC, picture it like a Venn diagram. There is a section in the middle where it can be both, but a lot of UGC is the ratings and reviews you see on websites. It's the videos, again, going back to that earned media that people are posting on their own volition, right? I like to think of this example with McDonald's just brought back the snack wrap after 10 years. Everybody wanted this highly coveted fan favorite item, for better or for worse, and the sheer amount of people who went out of their way to post their reviews of it unincentivized was massive. So that's a great example of UGC. And how it fits into the larger story is, again, that narrative that if it's coming from the brands, consumers will largely be skeptical, as folks should. You never just want to buy something that you're told to because it sounds magical. That's a thing of the 50s. And in 2025, it doesn't really work, right? So seeing the material content that comes out from other people, if you're shopping on an Amazon or a Best Buy, an eBay, whatever, seeing what people are saying, seeing how this couch from Wayfair looks in their living room that has similar paint. Does it look good? Does it not look good? I kind of like that. What's my styling? How am I going to incorporate this in my house? Maybe I don't like this. Let me try it somewhere else. Or maybe I do like this. I have enough of a perspective to make that purchase. UGC functions as a really great final piece in getting folks to close a purchase. When it's available, people are more likely to make a purchase. And brands also have a misconception that they need 100% positive reviews, but it's actually a mix of both positive and negative because people like to weigh it and come up with decisions. So UGC in general is a really, really fascinating tool, which just holds so much merit when it comes to that authenticity and helping people with the decision making when buying.
Lets them get into that level of detail where you've now got this whole, hopefully, host of folks who've actually looked at it, experienced it in ways that pre-consumption you couldn't be able to get to.
100%. And then I'll ask you the question too. When have you engaged with any UGC the last time you bought something online as Eric?
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking for all the 2-star reviews. It's like, why didn't they like it? It's like
they didn't hate it enough to give it 1.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's like 1-star review. You got to figure, right? Yeah, it's somebody just was really angry. 2-star reviews, they had to think about that. So yeah, but it's exactly to your point. I want to see the top line and I want to see the almost bottom line. But it's that comfort factor of knowing that there are a whole bunch of people out there who've actually got some experience with the thing. And what their take is on it.
It's great validation. It really is. And I'm going to take the 2-star rule and I'm starting using that when I do my own purchases. So thank you for that.
Hey, the podcast is full of all sorts of perspectives. Now, I want to get your take on what your average enterprise should be thinking about when they start looking at the broader creator economy, and how should they be thinking about both the technologies and the actual leveraging of that when they start looking at ad spend and overall marketing efforts.
Yeah, if a brand is considering the creator economy as their sort of growth lever, we like to call it social media as a growth lever for branded businesses. That's sort of what we've run as for the theme. There are a lot of different elements that expand beyond content in particular. Social listening is a really hot trend as well, which is I'd expect to be a long-term thing at this point where brands are using platforms like Quid to go on, and Brandwatch is another one, to see what people are saying about their brand on social media, what they're saying about competitors' brands, what they're saying about the creators they're creating, or the creators are considering, what they're saying about the creators they're considering working with, which is a really cool technology and really, really potent for measuring sentiment across, all the different mediums and platforms that exist. You also got embedded commerce, shoppable media, where you're enabling the content, which Meta's been an example of a company that's been doing this for a while, where they've had, Facebook Shop for a hot minute, but TikTok Shop came out a couple of years ago at this point. Embedding that commerce in helps shorten the path to purchase, and that is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity because you reduce all that friction to buy. And, paid social advertising as a whole is seeing such a massive increase in money because it's a very, very feasible way to get value for your dollars. So as an encompassing ecosystem, there are a lot of different ways to look at it that aren't just paying influencers. It's about leveraging the right combinations. And there's really a solution for the most part for anybody, at least on the consumer facing side, to reach the people that you want. And social makes it a lot easier because of how data backed it is, right? If you look at CTV is a good example of another one that is data backed. Web, obviously, with whether or not cookies are coming or going, has become very reliant on the first party data, which is obviously super enriched and valuable. CTV has a lot of it, but you're not getting the same level of engagement that you would on web. Again, there's still great value there because you have people's eyes and dedication. But yeah, as a whole, social media gives you so much of a lock, so much of a read on the people that you want to connect with. And they would honestly prefer to see more stuff that was relevant to them than not. So, in a lot of ways, does everybody love getting advertised to? No, but I think we've all come to understand that it's part of the process of being a consumer in today's economy. But if it's a more personalized experience, there's a lot of value. And social media offers you the ability to get in front of the people that are seeking that value and that want to connect.
Well, and it gets right back to a lot of the core messages from the customer experience team,
Yep.
which is you got to make sure that you are doing your targeting well. And, I am seeing things that I'm going to want. And that when I see that violin pop up, and I've been in the market, now if I can smell smoke and I can get overnight delivery, all right, let's get that violin. But
It's true.
but you got to have the technology pieces in place to ensure that you can really bring that full circle and do it accurately.
You do. That's one of the interesting things that we've seen from an industry standpoint, where a couple of years ago, CPG wasn't super keen on the social story as a whole. Now they've become a lot more interested in it in recent years because they've begun to recognize the value. And you're talking about very, very big legacy brands that have existed for 100+ years, at least in the States, right? And I like to think about this too in terms of how things fit into grocery and retail, where there've always been big data blackouts between the CPG companies and the retailers. A lot of stuff kind of goes out the window once you get that product out of your factory and your warehouse. But they're recognizing that, hey, I can reach people a lot more directly if I embrace the technologies that everybody else is kind of getting on board with. And so now you're starting to see a lot more of that laggard shift close the gap in terms of, oh, okay, this is the value and this is why they've done it. And now we need to, otherwise, it could take a hot young brand a year or two to have a product that competes like crazy. I like to think of this from a fast food standpoint, where you have a legacy brand like KFC. KFC was the top, I think I want to say it was the number two, number three chicken chain in the United States. And this year was just surpassed by Raising Cane's, a much younger brand. And when it comes to CPG, right, beverages, etc., I mean, whatever, antibacterial wipes, cat food, all it takes is the right company, like a Chewy, to surpass a Petco because it's embracing that digital technology. And social is a lot of that piece for sure.
A lot of pieces to put together.
A lot of pieces. From a CX standpoint, yeah, obviously you want your targeting to be right too. I didn't necessarily address that in the portion, but it all fits into a very big story of integrated experiences across channels, making sure what you experience in person is comparable to what you experience online. We all want that. You hate going into a store and feeling like there's a disconnect. And we talk about that a lot largely with customer experience and commerce here at 451 as well.
That we do. Well, and that really brings us full circle on this. So,
It does.
Zach, this has been great. I appreciate all your insights.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. Anytime you want to talk about creator economy, fried chicken, whatever, cat videos, I'm here for it.
Hey, sounds good. You're making me hungry already. So
I'm hungry all the time.
Well, there's so much more we could talk about, but we are at time for this episode. Thanks to our audience for staying with us. And thanks to our production team, including Sophie Carr, Feranmi Adeoshun, Kyra Smith, and Adam Kovalsky on the marketing and events teams. I hope you'll join us for our next episode, where we're going to be heading into fintech, financial technology, and a lot of the things that have been evolving in the payments ecosystem. There's been consolidation, there's been expansion. I hope you'll join us then, because there is always something next in tech.